Hello and welcome to another episode of Triangle Congruence. Tonight we're going to talk about one last acronym. We've talked about several different acronyms, and this is going to be the acronym, the last one, the longest one. As you can see, it's CPCTC. It's got a C, a lot of C's in it. It's got a P, it's got a T. It's the most exciting one we have. So here we go. CPCTC. First off, what does it stand for? As you can see in your notes, and you can see on the screen here, CPCTC stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. This is something we already knew. We've already used this in class. We've already talked about how once we have triangles congruent, what does that tell us about them? So here's a blast from the past. Here's a diagram from several sections ago, back in 4.3. We have this diagram. We have two triangles that are congruent. We got ABC on the left. We got DEF on the right. If you look at ABC and DEF, we know that they're congruent, which means definitionally congruent triangles, they have all their corresponding angles and all of their corresponding sides, as we have listed off here, congruent. So we know that angle A is congruent to angle D, B is congruent to angle E, angle C is congruent to angle F, etc., etc., etc. All CPCTC does is just reiterate this. It's our reason. It's kind of a shortcut, shorthand of, all right, so I know that these two triangles are congruent. That's why I know that these two angles are congruent, or these two sides are congruent. So it's going to be something we use after we've already said and know that two triangles are congruent. So let's see it in action. Here's our one proof for the night. It's going to be a short night. We got CPCTC. We know we're going to be using that somehow. We know we're trying to find out that angle A and angle D are congruent. I'm given a couple pieces of information that AB is congruent to DC and that angle ABC is congruent to angle DCB. So I'm going to start off the proof with those two things. So let's start off with AB is congruent to DC, and that's given. And then we got angle ABC congruent to angle DCB, and once again that's given. And I'm going to go ahead and mark it, since it's not marked yet, I'm going to go ahead and mark that angle ABC is congruent to angle DCB. Go ahead and stick those little arc marks on there so you can see that. It's kind of hard to see the two triangles here, but they overlap. We got ABC on the left and DCB on the right. You can see they share that bottom side there, that BC. And as we talked about last night, if we share a side between two triangles, we know that side's the same for both of them. So the reason for that, BC being congruent to CB, or BC being the same as BC, whichever way you want to say it, the reason for that is the reflexive property. It's just our fancy way of saying it's the same segment. Of course it's the same. Of course it's congruent to itself. That's a silly thing to have to prove to you, but we're going to go ahead and put it in here anyway because we're going to use it as backup, as proof, as evidence that we have two triangles here that are congruent. If you look, let me go ahead and put those little tick marks on that for you so it's a little easier to see. If you look here, we know that we have AB is congruent to DC. That's our first statement. And you can see AB and BC are your two pairs of sides that are congruent to DC and BC. And you got the angle in between them. So we're dealing with two sides with the included angle. That's SAS. SAS. Side, angle, side. Side, angle, side. Right there. Side, angle, side. So I'm going to go ahead and say those two triangles are congruent. I got ABC on the left and DCB on the right. They're congruent to each other because of our side, angle, side. But that's not what we were actually trying to prove. We know that that's great. We have congruent triangles, and that's what we've been focusing on for the past few nights. But that's not our end goal. Our goal is to find out that angle A and angle D are congruent. So we want to take it a step further. We're going to say, okay, now we got these congruent triangles. I know that the extra parts I knew nothing about going into this, are also going to be congruent. So I know that A and D, if you look on our little deal, A is the first letter I listed there. D is the first letter I listed on the second one. A and D should also be congruent. I'm going to go ahead and say that as my last statement. and that's my CPCTC. I've got congruent triangles, so their corresponding parts, in this case the angles, are going to be congruent as well. That's it for CPCTC. Hope you guys had a good time. See you tomorrow.